We may live over 5,000 miles from Lincoln Financial Field, but some weeks like this, it just doesn't seem like enough, Johnny. But each and every week, we're going to be bringing you guys in-depth film breakdowns from across the pond in the Sooner State. Welcome to On the Shane Page. I'm your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at Shane Haff NFL. I'm joined by BGN's own film guru, Johnny Page. Give him a follow on Twitter at JohnnyPage9. Johnny, how are you doing this evening?
Yeah, I had a bit of like a moment pre-show, Shane, today. I was thinking, when we started this podcast, the whole idea was, and I've always had a mantra of positivity. I'm not an optimist, but I don't really think coaches are idiots. And whenever we started this, it was always meant to be a breakdown of individual plays and why they worked and why they didn't work and lots of fun. And then last year just got so bad, it ended up being this is quite negative. And this year I was really excited, to get to go and break down two new coordinators. And it's week 4, and I kept apologizing in my Bleeding Green article this week. And I've had a comment I've just read now from someone saying you don't need to apologize. I like Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore know 55,000 times more than we do. They are incredibly smart coordinators who have had a history in the league, but this is not going to be a good show. I'm struggling with this game. I think the film was really bad, the defensive film in particular. And it's not just me. There are lots of smart guys out there that are saying the same things. Lots of guys that I follow in the Fangio circle that are very surprised by what they are seeing with the Eagles right now. And I think I tweeted this out. I think it may be time to have the honest conversation about what we've really seen throughout the first few weeks. So we will just get into this game. Obviously, I think next week we've got the bye weeks. We can do a little bit more big picture stuff. But yeah, apologies, because it feels very strange. I spent half my off season researching Fangio, and I love a lot of Fangio stuff. And I still, when people tell me the scheme doesn't work, I'm like, well, I just don't think that's true. But I'm not even sure we're running the scheme, and even though it is Vic Fangio running it, I'm not watching what I've seen Vic Fangio defenses doing. And I watched all of his defenses over the off season, and it doesn't look like one. So yeah, just a little bit of a warning before we get into it. I think I'm going to be tough to be too positive this week, but it's not really how I want to be. This show has ended up becoming half the episodes we filmed, Shane, has been moan at the coaches, which is the opposite of what I wanted to be. But yeah, I can't do much else this week. I'm not going to lie to people and try and point out positivity that I can't see. So I'll be positive where I can be. But yeah, I'm struggling a little bit with this one.
Yeah, we've got a pro tip coming in here from Anthony DeBona on Twitter. Says the film looks a lot better if you close your eyes. So I don't know if you tried that, Johnny, but perhaps something that's worth trying, especially if we get another one like this.
Yeah, BLG might not be the biggest fan of my articles if I had just typed nonsense and gibberish and had me filming my bathroom or my back room as I'm walking around blindfolded or something. But it might be more interesting for the readers than the actual game analysis this week.
All right. Well, now that we've told you this is going to be boring game analysis and stuff, stay tuned in. If you guys are watching here live, be sure you go subscribe to the Eagles Pinpool Network. This isn't the only show that's out there. It's the only show Johnny's on. Also, we've got a nice run of Johnny on post-game shows with 1 o'clock games here. So you can check him out on the post-game show. You can check me out on a lot of other shows. So there's a lot of content there. Also, just want to plug our Patreon community at patreon.com/ontheshanepage. You can go subscribe there in our $3 or $5 a month tier. And there's a lot of perks, an ad-free version of this podcast feed. My All-22 past game review videos go out to Patreon only. You get to help us choose a player spotlight, and we're going to get into that later in this episode. So a lot of cool stuff there. We can chat in a Discord, so go check that out if you are so inclined. Johnny, let's dive into it. Let's start with the defense, because it's not that the offense is positive either, but I think the defense is far more negative. Do you want to lead off, or do you want me to?
Yeah, can I start? Because I was going to say, can I start this week? Because my first play is the first play of the game. Right, Vic Fangio has got a reputation. Fangio's defense is built off split safety, too high, don't give up the big play. Now, there is lots of ways you can do that, and full disclosure, I'm a fan of that because I think that explosive pass plays in the NFL are why a lot of teams win football games. I bet if you compared most weeks and look at the most explosive plays, the most explosive offenses, normally the best offenses. So I fully get the idea of trying to limit big plays. There is a difference between doing that and just being flat out negative and passive. And I want to start, Shane, with the very first play of the game my film thread. Now, Mike Evans is 31 years old. 31 years old. Darius Slay is a very well-paid cornerback. I think the odds of Mike Evans burning Darius Slay deep are unlikely. But you know what? You would expect in this situation, because for those of you that aren't watching, there are 3 receivers at the other side. So you would expect the Eagles to possibly have a tricks call where Reed Blankenship, who is the safety next to Darius Slay, might ignore Slay. So Slay might be 1-on-1. But this actually isn't what happens. Reed Blankenship is basically staring at Mike Evans and Mike Evans only. The Buccaneers actually have run a 4-strong look here. So they run 4 receivers to the left, all 4. And the Eagles basically play 5 over 4 on that side, which means that they have, and they quite often will play like 1 extra. So you'd expect Blankenship to come across and leave Slay fully 1-on-1. But they don't. Darius Slay has a safety over the top, and he is playing 10 yards off Mike Evans. Like 10 yards with a safety over the top. I basically am just copying and pasting from what I said at the start of my article. But like against the Saints, the Eagles came out first play with a big stop against the run. The defense was fired up. Like as a defense, forget like tactics and scheme and analysis and whatever. Like this is football. This is sport. Anyone who's ever played sport knows it's a physical game, right? These are tough guys, and you need to set a tone early that you are not going to be messed with. You want to set like a really hard first play. Let the other team know that you're not going to just sort of be there to be walked over. You couldn't give a team an easier start. Baker Mayfield has 1-on-1 coverage. He looks up. He sees Darius Slay's 10 yards off the ball pre-snap, and he knows Mike Evans is running a curl route. Route, in English. He looks up, 8 yards, throws the ball. He even like hitches. I think he's almost like, there's 2 guys there. Is this free? Oh, yeah, he's still got time to hitch. And then
pump fakes. He literally pump fakes and still has time to throw the curl route.
I think it's because he might be a little bit confused by like maybe when he sees Blankenship going over, he's thinking maybe Darius Slay is like going to jump this or something. No, he has the time to pump fake and still get it out. And the message this sends is just like, it's so easy. Jalen Hurts struggles to complete his first pass because they don't let you get in a rhythm. And you feel like instantly 2nd and 2, brilliant. 2nd and 2 is like the dream situation because you can call a fancy, expansive play. If it goes wrong, you've still got 3rd and 2. You're in a great situation. You're just giving teams like easy yardage. And there's a lot of this. I'm not going to do my second play because it mentions a bit of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who we're going to talk about later on. So I thought I'd just show like one more because I think more people have seen enough of this. I think everyone's seen this clip by now already. But clip 11 on my film thread. So clip 11, the Bucs are in a 2x2 set. Quinion Mitchell has the outside receiver. Quinion Mitchell is legitimately 12 yards off Sterling Shepard chain on 2nd and 12. 2nd and 12 is an obvious pass down, right? The Bucs are not a good running team. The odds are they are going to throw here. They're spread out. This looks like a pass all day long. Quinion Mitchell is, and I'm not joking, 12 yards off him. Even when he tackles him, I think he still has about 16, 17. You watch the offense film, Shane. There is not a single throw that Jalen Hurts has that is this easy. The 2 plays I've shown, there is not one play in the whole game, I would say, that Jalen Hurts has that easier read and that easier decision. It is so easy. And I love Quinion Mitchell. I think Quinion Mitchell is awesome. But someone's got to get in his ear. Like Vic Fangio gave a bit of a weird answer. He said, like, well, as coaches, we let the players decide how they press, but there's obviously certain calls. And I'm like, it's a bit of a rubbish answer. Like, you're the coach. Like, this is a rookie. Tell him where you want him. If you want him lined up 5 yards off the receiver all game, 5 yards off the receiver. Against Sterling Shepard, get in his grill. You have no reason to be that far off. And the only thing I can think of is that there is such an emphasis, and this has come from Sirianni, from the Eagles organization, why they are obsessed with Fangio. What are they obsessed with on offense, Shane? Explosive passing plays. The organization is obsessed with explosive passing plays. And it seems to have filtered down into everything they do to the point where in this game, do you know what? I haven't even looked at the numbers, but I can't recall like a deep shot going over their heads. I can't recall the Eagles getting burned down the field that often. They were just picked apart, and it was so easy for the Buccaneers. That's the annoying thing for me. If Fangio doesn't learn from this and doesn't come out after the bye week and we don't see some press coverage, this defense will not get any better because you can do all the fancy things in the world. It doesn't matter if you're 10 or 12 yards off because teams will just routinely check it down time and time again. So yeah, that annoyed me. I've been here before with Gannon. I've been in before with Sean Desire. I do not mind the philosophy of not giving up big plays. In fact, I totally get it. you can still do that without being in like extreme press coverage on every snap, just 5-6 yards off. Like Quinion Mitchell is not getting outrun by Sterling Shepard, and Darius Slay is not getting outrun by Mike Evans. And when you've got a safety over the top, there is no reason at all to be 10 yards off on the first play of the game. So yeah, whether it's players or coaches, to be honest, I get this question a lot. I couldn't care less. It's both. I don't know who's more at blame. Both of them are. If it's the players choosing it, the coaches need to tell them not to do it. If the coaches are telling them to do it, the coaches need to stop. So either way, it's bad. Yeah, that's my first rant of the day, and it won't be the final one, sadly. Anything else you wanted to add on the passive comment, or do you want to get straight into your first one?
I mean, even you play passive, you still gave up 5, 10+ yard plays on the first 2 possessions. So playing passive did not prevent explosive plays. It invited them. And so, yeah, it's just a bad approach. Even on this play that you mentioned with Quinion, if you look to the bottom of the screen and look at Darius Slay is in, this is a cover 1 blitz. It looks like to me, because Darius Slay tracks Mike Evans on a drag route, but he's playing cover 1 from, again, 8-9 yards off with outside leverage in a blitz where no one's in the middle of the field. Like, look how open Mike Evans is. If Quinion Mitchell jumps that, you're still throwing this to Mike Evans, and Mike Evans might take it for a touchdown, considering the fact Sterling Shepard could block Quinion Mitchell and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson can't tackle his own shadow. So it's just, there were 2 options here. And to be honest, Baker might have hit the one that did the least damage. It was just a mess.
Yeah, can you remember when the Fangio defense was known for like distribution of routes and passing players off and not getting killed by that? Because if he runs a certain way, you shout under and then rely on that. There's just none of it. Like, I don't know. That's not a Fangio defense. That's not an acceptable NFL defense. It's just a straight 2x2 drop. They're running an out and a shallow cross, and both of them are wide open against the 2 best Eagles cornerbacks. It's a horrendous play.
Yeah. Well, my first point is going to be about run defense, and I want to talk about cornerbacks fitting the run. And I really just want to show 2 plays to show contrasting examples here. The first play is going to be Darius Slay in a run fit on the outside. A run's coming his direction. So at the top of the screen, Darius Slay, we're 8 yards off, and we're going to get motion away. And so Darius Slay basically ends up almost to the hash when the ball is snapped. He has outside contain. And I just want you to watch the lack of speed with which he comes downhill and then allows the run to get outside of him anyways. So he drifts back 2 yards. He takes a bad angle. He lets the run get outside. We're dragging it down 10 yards downfield. And you can see from the back view, just the angle's awful. And he gives up the sideline, gives up 10 yards. Now I want to show you Quinion Mitchell in a very similar situation. 4 down front. Quinion Mitchell is going to get brought inside almost to the hash with motion. And I want you to watch how Quinion Mitchell plays the run differently. And so you get the motion. He's actually further inside than Darius Slay was when the ball was snapped. He's actually on the hash. And he fires downhill, and he makes a tackle at the line of scrimmage. It's a 2-yard gain. Like, the difference, that there is just such a stark contrast between how those 2 guys are fitting the run right now. And that makes a huge difference because, we can moan about a lot of stuff. We can moan about our linebackers and pass coverage, and we can moan about a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, it all ties together. If you cannot stop the run, you have to overplay the run, and it makes it easier to pass. And if you got to get into 5 and 6-man fronts, it's harder to play the run or the pass. And it's all tied together. And it's not just the guys up front. Good run defense is a whole team effort. And what you see in those 2 plays, and it's not just, anybody could cherry pick an example, but this is there. It's all over the film. Is that Quinion Mitchell does a really good job coming downhill to fit that stuff. And Darius Slay's not right now. And that's a problem. At this point, it's not about Avonte Maddox, but Avonte Maddox was also just awful in this game, both in coverage and in fitting the run. When only one of your 3 cornerbacks is a plus in the run game, that's going to be a problem, especially if you're going to consistently play 2 high safety looks pre-snap.
Yeah, and you know what? This links to my point about passive defense as well. Like, I'm not defending Darius Slay, by the way, because Slay has never been good in run defense. It's not his game, is it? But you're asking quarterbacks to do a lot when they're coming from 10, 12 yards deep to fit the run. Like, that Quinion Mitchell plays a really good play, but you know what? It's quite a hard play to make. Like, it'd be a lot easier for the cornerbacks to fit the run if they're 5, 6 yards off the ball and not 10 or 12 yards. I haven't even got a point on missed tackles, partly because I forgot, but partly because I mentioned it so much on the post game. But like, missed tackles is a defensive stat; it's not just an individual stat. And do you know half the reason why they'll make missing so many tackles is because they're coming from downhill time after time. We haven't really got a section on this pod. I think we will do it next week, although we haven't even spoke about this, about like what the Eagles can do to turn this around. And I think the obvious one is going to be Cooper DeJean coming into the nickel over Avonte Maddox, because this was the game when you were like, yeah, Avonte might be past it. This was rough. But I think actually the run fits and the passive coverage go quite well. I'll jump into my second point as well, which is something similar actually. And the third point is when I'm really going to moan. I'm not going to moan as much on this one. It's a consistent thing that I'm seeing. And it happens time and time again with the Eagles this year. It is my final play, actually, play 13. Now, I didn't track every single snap like you have before on the run fits, but I'm convinced the Eagles were better from a 5-man front in this game. However, this is an example of what everyone wants the Eagles to do. This is a 5-man front. You've got, in fact, quite a loaded front here with Zach Bourne coming down at edge. Shane, the gap between the Eagles' 4-eye, whatever you want to call them, and their edge defender in some of their run fits is utterly ridiculous. And people talk about Fangio being negative, but we said this a couple of weeks ago, it's so overly aggressive. If you just play it very simply and then pause it, and this is a simple outside run, teams are deliberately, this is the Falcons, by the way. This is the Falcons, outside zone, under center. They are deliberately doing this, and they are targeting with gap scheme or outside zone this gap. That gap, if you cannot see it because you're listening, the gap between the defensive tackle and the edge defender is absolutely massive. And you can pick holes in like the Kobe Dean doesn't read this perfectly. You can pick holes in like a number of different things. But at the end of the day, the key is watch how Jordan Davis and Brandon Graham play this. And this is the crucial bit. They are not playing gap and a half technique, which we spoke about with Fangio plenty of times. They are not playing 2-gap. They are slanting inside. And if they guess correctly and the run goes to them, brilliant. Tackle for loss. But every time they miss, it feels like a big run is possible. And I'm not happy with a run defense that's set up to essentially it's a 50-50 split on every play. We might guess right, we might guess wrong. And full disclosure, like I put this in the article as well, I'll be nice. They had a sack earlier on where the whole defensive lineman slanted, and it looked absolutely beautiful. Everyone slanted to the right, and it was perfect. Brandon Graham came completely unblocked. But you know what? I do not understand this current defense's use of personnel, and this is going to be another one of my points. That I've got too many points on defense that I can't today. The way they use certain players is really weird. Like, I'm fed up of seeing Jordan Davis slanting. Jordan Davis can do many things. Jordan Davis should be anchoring the defense 2-gap, or at the very least a gap and a half. And they're not. They're not using Jordan Davis like that. They're slanting their defensive linemen so frequently, and some of the run fits in this game were really, really poor. The Bucs have been a historically awful running attack for like 2 years now. Rashad White can't run the ball. I know, I'm a fantasy owner of Rashad White. If Rashad White doesn't catch like 6 balls a game, he does absolutely nothing. And their run fits this week were just really, really poor. You look at Rashad White's average yards per carry this year, 2.1, 1.8, 2.8, 4.9. Like, guess who the team that gave up nearly 5 yards a carry to Rashad White was? And I had this conversation online with a few people as well. I do not think the Eagles' defensive line is bad enough to be this bad of a run team. I think if you have Milton Williams, Moro Jomo, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, you do have 2 edge defenders who can play the run. Brandon Graham and Nolan Smith could absolutely play the run. The Kobe Dean has flaws. They're in coverage. He can come down here against the run fine. And you also have Zach Bourne, who's been excellent this year. You should not be this bad as a run defense. They are not perfect players, but at this point, I am looking more at the coaches than I am looking at the individuals.
Yeah, you talked about just how bad they are in general against the run. Coming into this game, The Buccaneers were 28th in rushing EPA per play and 29th in rushing DVOA. And they rushed for 111 yards on 4.4 yards per carry. It's just too easy. And if it's that easy to run because like you're taking the old Brandon Staley approach, like we're just going to light box and you're not going to be able to pass on us. Baker Mayfield threw for almost 350 yards. Like he wasn't even challenged. So they're not doing either phase well right now. And there's a bit of a sliding scale. Like if you devote more resources to stopping the pass, it gets easier to run. And I get that. And I'm fine with like having a weakness, but you got to have a strength that corresponds to that weakness. And the Eagles just haven't had that so far.
Yeah, it's really disappointing. And to be honest, I've said it about Fangio before. I don't think this is like they're just playing too high and the safeties are 15 yards deep and that's why they can't fit the run. To me, it's more about defensive line more than anything. I think it's on the defensive line, and I'm not blaming the individuals. But I don't watch this defense and see split safeties all over the place. I saw like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson coming down in the box a lot in this game as an extra run defender. The whole use of personnel was just weird. This is a nothing point, but there was one snap later on where Keely Ringo plays and he's in the slot. And I'm just like, is that really how you're going to use in dime? You're going to use Keely Ringo in the slot? That's not how I would use him at all. There's a good comment, by the way, coming in on YouTube from Mike, who said you can't always get away with the 5-man fronts. If the offensive plays 11 personnel, it can force an edge to drop back. You are 100% correct, Mike. The big issue with the 5-man fronts is that against 11 personnel, it can leave you open. But I don't fully agree. You don't have to force an edge to drop back. Number one, you can choose to drop an edge back as long as you do it far better than the Eagles did this week with Nolan Smith, which I'm not going to show that play because it's so embarrassing. It's
By the
unreal.
way, can I chime in on that play real fast?
Yep.
The reason Nolan Smith ended up manned up on, was it Chris Godwin? I think it was Chris Godwin.
It was Chris Godwin.
The play before, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were in 12 personnel. And after that play, they subbed a tight end out and brought a wide receiver in, and the Eagles didn't sub. So the Eagles were in base personnel against 11 personnel. And that's how you end up with Nolan Smith in the slot. That wasn't even necessarily related to like trying to play a 5-man front. It was just you didn't sub to match personnel. Yeah.
And I'm going to just really quickly on Mike's point, because it's a good schematic point. It is a problem. If you go to a 5-man front consistently against 11 personnel, I agree with you. You are in trouble. I think there are a couple of things you can do. You can do it on early downs when you think there's a high chance of run. So like 1st and 10, for example. And then if you get them into 2nd and 12, if you get lucky and they run on you, then you can drop to a 4-man front. Also, you can just send 5. Like, I don't think it has to, I mean, I know it's deemed as a blitz when you send 5, but I don't see it as a blitz. If you've got 5-man front and all of them rush, I don't see it as a blitz. You can play fire zone behind that. If you've got a really good defensive personnel on the back end and you've got 6 defenders in coverage that understand their roles, you have 2 guys in the flat, 1 guy in the hook zone, 3 guys deep. If they pass plays off, some of Fangio's best defenses ever have unbelievably good fire zone coverages. Like, they're really good at them. So if you do rush 5, you don't have to drop an edge back. You do have to if you want to rush 4. Granted, if you've got a 5-man front, Mike, and you want to rush 4, then you do have to drop an edge back. And we know that they've not been historically very successful with that. But you don't have to. You can just rush 5 on 1st and 10, and you can play fire zone behind it. I'm not going to get too technical into this because this is something that I am looking at more of late. But Match Quarters has done a brilliant bit of analysis of late on how there's quite a few teams around the league playing 2-4 on the back end these days. Like, they're rushing 5 and playing 2 hole defenders and then 4 deep defenders behind them. So they're continuing to play split safety whilst also only playing 2 hook defenders. And although that sounds like the underneath zones are really high, are really obvious to exploit, you basically do it by playing your 2 outside cornerbacks in press man. So essentially, you sort of take away the short stuff, yet you still have 4 deep defenders. It's not something that we're seeing hugely around the league yet. But my point being is that there are ways of sending 5 men and not having to drop an edge against 11 personnel. I think it's a slightly bit overrated that you can't play 5-man fronts against 11 personnel. I think Fangio clearly believes it. But when I watch this game, I think the Eagles are still better from heavier fronts. And I think they're better from heavier fronts because they've got better personnel that fits a 5-man front currently than it does a 4-man front. But that's a great question, Mike. It wasn't even a question, actually, to be fair. It was just a comment that I wanted to respond to. But great comment.
Yeah, let's go to a couple comments and then I'll get into my second point here. Dez on Twitter or X says that Fangio is washed now. Paul says that the defense is just a mess. Itrell, is it Latrell? I guess that's an L, not a capital I. Latrell says being 7 to 10 yards off is odd with 2 high safeties. That's kind of crazy. We've got, I'm very done with the Avante experience between him and CJ being missed tackle machines. Life is tough. And then we had another YouTube comment saying that 5-man front should have been used more as well. So a lot of comments there. You guys keep the comments coming. We'll keep rolling along. I want to talk about how to defend bunch because the Eagles got twice in this game out of bunch. And it is really hard to play against a bunch 3-over-3. And so if you just look at this first one, this is the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson touchdown allowed. It's 3-over-3. You've got 3 defenders over 3 receivers. That's just really tough. All of the congestion and all the traffic, it's really hard. Like, I feel pretty confident that like 95 times out of 100, somebody's getting open here when you try to play 3-over-3. And even more so when you motion out and now you have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson lined up on Mike Evans. Like, he wasn't initially on Mike Evans. He's initially on, I don't even remember who that is. Godwin, maybe. He ends up on Mike Evans. And so they're just going to run Mike Evans on a corner route. And Chauncey Gardner-Johnson has no help inside or outside. And then they're just going to like collision Quinyon Mitchell and run like a slant route. Both of these are open. So you guys all know what happens with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. But if you look at the other 2 guys, you get a perfect little rub route here that's also open. And you could have thrown that touchdown 2 different ways. So what should the Eagles do here? Well, you can't play 3-over-3. It's just not a good idea. I would rather see you have a linebacker that's responsible for low and inside. Like, you can box this. There's no reason that you can't box this and have your linebacker responsible low and inside. You can have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson responsible high and inside, Quinyon Mitchell high and outside, and Avante Maddox low and outside. Like, you can box this off. And then your rub route doesn't really work. Your corner route is running against a cornerback with outside leverage. Like, there's different things that you can do, but you can't do this because that's putting Chauncey Gardner-Johnson should defend this better, but you're putting him in a position to fail. And then we get down on the goal line later in the game. And this time it doesn't look like a bunch to start with, but they're going to motion into a dirty bunch, which is basically where you've got the 2 receivers condensed and then you send a running back out. And so they motion into this, and the Eagles have had a problem defending dirty bunches going back a long time. But look at what they try to do. Again, we've got 2 corners over 2 guys. So we're trying to play 2-over-2. We're lined up with each other right on the goal line. And now you've got Nakobe Dean trying to run with the motion man on the exact same line. And he's actually going to run into Darius Slay. So he picks Darius Slay. The offense didn't even have to do it. The defensive alignment just picked Darius Slay. That's the easiest touchdown you'll ever throw. You got to have a different answer against bunches. You cannot try to just leave guys. Ironically, we will not put guys on an island in the open field, but we get down to the goal line and congratulations, you are totally on your own. And by the way, against a bunch where all the space is compressed and you just don't have a chance to win. So the Eagles got with this twice at the goal line. You got to figure that out. It's been an issue, I feel like, for 3 years.
Oh, the Bucs had their number in the red zone. Like, clearly that first play, Chauncey got done with it the week before as well. The Saints did something very similar in the red zone where they lined up a receiver in the slot and ran an out, and Chauncey was done. And it's a really hard route for him to cover. Like, if we're being honest, it's basically impossible. Shane, I'm laughing as you're talking because, like, do you know what? I want to do what you do. I want to say, do you know what Vic Fangio should do? Is Vic Fangio should run Vic Fangio's coverage called Box that I learned from Vic Fangio. And now I'm on a podcast going, hey, Vic, remember that thing that, like, every film guy was talking about you being like unbelievably good at coaching. Yeah, that thing you used to do all the time called box. When they had 3 receivers or a bunch, you played 4-over-3, and when they had 2-by-2, you played triangle. Yeah, that thing that I've learned from you, that every coach in the league knows from you. Like, have you forgotten? Has the game passed him by? There's something just incredibly like ironic about me saying, yeah, Fangio should play a box, shouldn't he? Like,
Yeah.
What? I'm talking about Fangio's coverages to Vic Fangio. It's just the weirdest thing. Like, I don't know. I know when you get a bunch in the goal line, if you go box, you obviously lose a man in the run fit. But you know what? You're playing the Bucs. Go and put some big, beefy defensive line out there. Get Jordan Davis, get Thomas Booker out there, and survive with one less guy. And if the Bucs run it in because you've got one less guy in the box, then so be it. You cannot go 3-over-3 against a play against that. Like, everyone's going to be open every time. I could game plan against the Eagles in the red zone. I would go a bunch and I would run slant for that. And they don't pass off routes. They don't distribute. You could do double slant with an out. Everything's open. You could do double slant flat. You could do double slant wheel with Mike Evans running like behind the slants as well. There is like so much stuff you could do. Like, it just feels so stupid that I'm on a podcast telling Vic Fangio like to use box when I've learned box, as pretty much everyone on the internet has learned all this terminology we use, Shane, like distributing routes, like under calls, like push calls, shove calls, box, triangle coverages. We've all learned it. It's Vic Fangio's terminology. We're using Fangio's terminology and he is not running it himself. Like, I don't know if it's funny or not. Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it, though? It is bizarre.
Yeah, it's something, that's for sure.
Yeah, right. Let's get to my third point because it's 31 minutes in and oh my goodness, we're still on defense. Right. One of the big criticisms of the Fangio defense, which I would agree with, is it's too complicated. And it is very complicated. And we've said this before, but I'm starting to think that maybe it's too complicated if your players can't run it properly. Like, it might be one of those things, and this is my sort of theory at the moment, is the Fangio defense is perfect if every single player does everything right on every play. And basically, teams just either aren't good enough or the players aren't good enough. But the amount of miscommunication, Shane, in this game, like, you know us, we watch the film, and I'm not being like we're film guys, but if you've only watched a TV copy, what you don't see is the amount of stuff that happens after the snap. Because when you watch the All-22, you get that little 4 or 5 seconds after the play's over that you don't get on TV. And you just see players like from a completely like natural position, just turning around, looking at each other going, what the hell was that? And when a defense is bad, you see it all the time. There was so many snaps in this game where players look and they're like, is that how it's supposed to be? Like, the first one is their second or third touchdown, I think. It's play 4 on my film thread. Like, this is very basic analysis here, Shane. But basically, Darius Slay has outside leverage and they run like a skinny post to the middle of the field. Now, most coverages are either middle field open, middle field closed. If they're middle field closed, you have a single high safety. If they're middle field open, you have a split safety. The Eagles do nothing here. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is playing over to one side. There's no one in the middle of the field except the Kobe Dean because they decided to use Reed Blankenship on the running back, which apparently they think Rashad White is like peak Christian McCaffrey and he desperately needs Reed Blankenship all game. Make far more sense from personnel use to get the Kobe Dean out in the flat and Reed Blankenship in the middle of the field. So either the Kobe Dean is meant to like rotate and this is some sort of tamper coverage where he's the middle field defender, or the Eagles just don't have a middle field defender. But if you look at how Chauncey Gardner-Johnson plays this, you don't see teams play with one safety on one side and then no one on the other side of the field if they're not playing single high. So my guess is this is a miscommunication once again. And I'm not just going to pick on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, but there's another really obvious one that he does on play 9. This looks like a fire zone. I would assume it's a fire zone anyway. The Eagles look like they're 3-by-3, which means they've got 3 under and 3 deep. And if you have 3 under, you have 2 in the flats and you have 1 in the hook zone in the middle. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson just isn't in the flat. Like, no one's in the flat. Maybe it's not his fault. So I said this very clearly in the article. We are not in the meeting room. So I'm not going to say for certain that this is Chauncey's fault. But what I can say for certain is it's somebody's fault. And somebody has screwed up. And we're in week 4 now. These games matter. You can't just say the scheme they will all figure out after the bye week. And week 8, there is a real criticism of the Fangio defense that it's too complicated. And my favorite example is, final one I'll do is play 12. They end up changing personnel. And this is what I mean about a defense being complicated. When you're bringing in backups, what is sometimes useful is having, sorry, Shane, that's not the play. Play 12 on my film, Fred, sorry. Sometimes you have like a simple scheme. It doesn't matter whether you're a backup. Doesn't matter whether you're from the practice squad. Doesn't matter whether you're like an undrafted free agent. If you go and tell a team to play cover one man, like, I know it sounds very simple, but if you're the outside cornerback, you're in man coverage. What the Eagles seem to do is have these plays where when they bring in defenders that aren't used to it, it just doesn't work. So this is a play where they've got Avonte Maddox and in the slot and Keely Ringo like even further inside him. And the Bucs just run like a simple out from their inside receiver or even like a flat route. And then they run a deep in. And Avonte Maddox clearly thinks that Keely Ringo is going to take the inside guy because Avonte Maddox starts to run to the flat. Keely Ringo then runs straight past Avonte Maddox and clearly takes the flat, which means that Avonte Maddox is now 5 yards off the deep in. This is 3rd and 12 or whatever, and they get a first down. And I sort of clipped this up. I unfortunately didn't go right to the end of my recording, but Avonte Maddox is furious on this play. You can just about see it on the back of the film clip. He turns around and he yells at Ringo. And my guess is that Maddox is right, as the veteran who's played in this scheme for a while, and that Maddox is supposed to take the flat here, and Keely Ringo is supposed to carry it inside, because that's what Fangio normally does with his defenses. But the problem is, if you've got an outside cornerback who's a second-year player who's only playing one snap and dime and playing a slot cornerback, you're asking a lot. And it feels like this week more than ever, the players just didn't really have a good grip on the scheme. And I know it's a difficult scheme. I know it takes time to learn. But at what point do you say, like, this is a little bit too complicated and we need to simplify things? We're going to play cover one man on 3rd and long because we think we can keep it easy because Ringo's going in and we think it's easier that way. It just feels like the players don't really know what they're being asked to do in pass coverage. And this week, more than any other week in a while, I saw so many plays when I was like, I don't quite know if that's how it's supposed to look. And it almost, in a weird way, makes me feel better about Fangio in terms of like, I don't actually think this is what he wants. The problem is part of your job as a coach is not just to call plays on a playbook. Anyone can call a play, Shane. Anyone. Your job as a coach is to coach players for every specific scenario that they may see in a game and exactly how you have to respond in your specific position to whatever the offense throws at you. And right now it looks like the Eagles defensive backs don't understand what they're being asked to do.
Yeah, we got a comment here from Philly Sports All on Twitter that says the Dolphins were a second half season defense last year. He thinks that this season will be the opposite of last year, where the Eagles get better down the stretch. That's very true.
Could be true.
Last season, the Dolphins week 1 through 4 gave up a 51 or 52% success rate, which was worst in the league. And from week 5 on, they gave up like a 41% success rate that ranked 7th in the league. Now the Eagles defense is not that bad right now. And the Dolphins sustained a lot of injuries down the stretch, but it is still concerning that you're starting out looking this way, especially when you've got all of your starters healthy. So hopefully they will, hopefully they'll figure it out, make some of those adjustments over the bye week. And you stole a few of my clips, Johnny, from my next point. So I'm doing the player spotlight this week. From our Patreon community, you guys voted for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to be the player spotlight of the week. And so I feel comfortable saying that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was the worst player on the field on Sunday for the Eagles, both sides of the ball. He played terribly. And out of 67 safeties this season that have played at least 150 snaps, he ranks 67th in missed tackle rate and 67th in touchdowns allowed. So we'll always have that 4th and 1 stop in New Orleans. But, man, this was a rough game. And so I've got a few plays that I'll show just to kind of demonstrate some of the issues. The first one is a run fit. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's at the bottom right of the screen. And this, we could talk about run fits and the fact that we've got Jordan Davis lined up on the guard and Brandon Graham outside the tight end. Like, we could talk about how this is a problem, but we probably don't need to because we've hammered that already. But just watch Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. He's moving backwards. Like, he's tentative. Like, this is clearly a run, right? You've got two guys pulling and we're moving backwards, and then we get outside, and then that's just that's a terrible, terrible tackle attempt. Just gets a half an arm on him. And then on another one here, we've got, this is going to be a screen. And if I'm watching this play unfold, you've got two running backs in the backfield, and one of them goes into orbit motion behind two receivers out at the perimeter. I'm immediately thinking screen. And if you just watch Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's reaction here, how slow he is to come down. And then takes kind of a bad angle. And fortunately, Avonte Maddox is able to eat up 2 blocks, and Quinyon Mitchell makes the play because Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's just not there. And this next play, it's the one you talked about where Reed Blankenship goes to the flat. I feel really confident in saying that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson just messes this up, that he's supposed to rotate into a single high safety. Darius Slay's playing with outside leverage because he's expecting inside help, and he plays pretty good coverage. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's just off playing an assignment that wasn't his. And then this is the other one you stole, but again, this is a fire zone blitz. I feel really comfortable saying that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's responsibility in a fire zone blitz, okay, outside corner takes number 1 if he goes vertical, which he does. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson has the number 2 receiver if he goes vertical, and if not, he should be in the flat. There is no vertical route from a number 2 receiver. He should be in the flat, and he's just not. He's 15 yards downfield. And so Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is making mistakes as a tackler. He's making mental mistakes. I'm not going to question effort on this podcast, but I put some clips up that look not that great on Twitter. And then you've got him here playing center field. And I thought this was strange. Like, they continued to like rotate Reed Blankenship down into the flat or into the box and have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson high. And I feel like that's just the inverse of how you want to do it. But either way, he is playing single high at the snap, and he's going to rotate. This is going to be a split field coverage. And Quinyon Mitchell is trapping this out route from the slot. And so James Bradbury got a pick. I think it was against the Dolphins last year on this. It's where you start to fall off and you have eyes on this out route, right? And you're going to undercut this if Baker Mayfield throws it. And Chauncey Gardner-Johnson has to get over here because he's the deep defender. And Baker Mayfield takes the shot. He just gets his fingertips on it. I mean, when you are playing, you're playing with fire there. And it works out here, but like, you're a half step away from getting an interception, and you're a half step the other way away from giving up a touchdown. That one could have gone either way. And so he does make the play there, and he saves the touchdown. And, you know, he, like I said, he's a half step away from getting an interception on that one, but he's also a half step away from us talking about, man, he gave up another touchdown. And so it's a game of inches, and this one works out okay for him, but it's really close. But I felt like I had to put that one in there because I kind of feel like that's the closest thing. That's the most positive play he had on the day. So I at least wanted to be fair and show that one.
Yeah, firstly, shout outs to Patreon because they picked the perfect player to talk about. I'm very glad you said you would take this one this week because I think I would say something that I might regret on future podcasts. I can't quite believe how bad he was this game. And we need to get to the offense. Although the offense will be quicker this week because in all honesty, there's not that much to talk about. I did, for the first time in many articles, Shane, I did question effort. I think I feel comfortable enough watching the film this week that I think something wasn't right. And there were plays when back was turned, when he wasn't taking on blocks, when quite frankly, the tackling effort was pathetic. And I think he's a very, very good player, but I think he needs a bit of a reality check. That there's a comment coming through as well from Mike again saying that we think we see Sidney Brown. Yes, I actually called for this in the article. If Sidney Brown was healthy this week, I think Chauncey would have got benched. Because unless Vic Fangio is watching a different game to me, I'd have been very surprised if he had kept him out there. I won't say too much more because I feel like I could go really in on this one because I think the first 2 drives, was as bad as a film as I've ever seen for a safety in 2 drives. Like, it was quite simply horrible. But I think we should transition to the offense, although there's not as much to talk about with the offense this week. This was always going to be a D-heavy week because the defense was so poor. And unlike the offense has got injury things we can talk about. We can quite feasibly say the offense in a month will not look like this. Defense might do. So I knew we were always going to go a little bit long on this defense. But should we transition to the offense, Shane?
Yeah, let's get into the offense. And like Johnny said, we'll go a little quicker here. I will start us off on the offense. I want to talk about the Jalen Hurts fumble. And a lot of you guys might have seen Fran Duffy break this play down as well. I don't think I have a lot of different thoughts than what he did, other than I do still put a little more of this fault on Hurts and on the play call. I don't really like the play call, but here's where the situation. You're down by 14. You're driving just crossed into the red zone. It's 1st and 10 from the 19-yard line. And I just don't really like the play call. Let me let it play so we get the motion across the formation to set everything up here. And so at the snap of the ball, we've got 3 receivers at the bottom of the screen, 1 at the top. Saquon Barkley's in the backfield. And it's just going to be vertical routes. Like, we're just running vertical routes. And Dallas Goedert, like, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a flat route or a wheel route. I'm not sure. It kind of is hard to tell. But so there's a lot of things that go wrong in this play. And I don't like the play call. I don't know why you need to take a shot. Why are you throwing vertical from the 19-yard line? This is a play from the 50-yard line. But I digress on that. Let's talk about the actual play. The first thing that goes wrong is Grant Calcaterra gets pressed. He gets pushed inside off his route. Now, Grant Calcaterra is trying to get upfield, and then he's going to try to break in front of this safety. But because he gets pushed inside, our timing's already off. And he takes forever to get back outside and threaten the safety and then eventually kind of try to loop back in. It just takes too long. Now, like, he can't just start cutting in at the 10-yard line because there's a linebacker sitting there. You have to threaten the safety outside. But he gets way outside at the 5-yard line. He's like got both feet outside the hash. We're still not breaking. We're still not turning inside. He's just content to run right up the seam at the safety. It's like, that's bad route running. And it's complicated by the press, but it's bad route running. It also hurts that the Bucs get the Eagles sliding away from the blitz. So the Eagles are going to slide to the right here, and they get Levante David blitzing untouched through the A-gap. That's not ideal. Saquon Barkley is going to go collision him in the hole. You would like to see your running back. I don't know. I was going to say we all remember. Everybody might not remember, but I just remember Maurice Jones-Drew, like teeny tiny Jacksonville running back, like decleating linebackers occasionally. And you would like that. Saquon Barkley at least meets him in the hole. You give time for Hurts to see this and to realize there's something going on. And it's a credit to Hurts. Like, we can talk about his pocket awareness, and I think he does a good job here of he sees him coming in, both hands on the ball, sidesteps in the pocket. The problem is he then tries to reset and throw. And the guy you just dodged is still right there. Like, this isn't a defensive tackle that's going to take a long time to stop, and he used all his energy. And this is a linebacker, and it's a pretty athletic linebacker that's a good blitzer. And so you've got to know that he's coming, and you just can't do that. Like, to me, just tuck this and run. It's not, your timing's already off. Look at the moment he gets here. All the room he has to run. Like, how many yards is he getting if he just takes off straight up field? Now, 5, maybe 10. Regardless, like, you're going to still be in the red zone, and you're going to have 2nd and short or a new set of downs. And it's tough because, you know, people will criticize Hurts for leaving the pocket too early and not keeping his eyes downfield. And it's a balancing act. But on this play, I just think, man, I don't like the play call in the situation. The Bucs get you in the perfect play call. I don't like the route that your tight end runs. If you're going to run this, have Dallas Goedert be the guy running that route. Like, there's just a lot of small things that add up into a turnover that ultimately pretty much ends the game for you. So that's my thoughts on the Hurts fumble. Johnny, what did you think about that one?
Yeah, it's a really tough play. You sound a bit like me on the post-game show, Shane. I said that people are trying to turn Jalen Hurts into a pocket quarterback. That's a great pocket play. Like, the way he avoids the rush, the way he puts 2 hands on the ball, the way he resets his feet is perfect. I don't know if I want perfect. I think I want a guy who beats the rusher and runs, because we've got an extremely athletic quarterback who's great outside of structure. For what it's worth, we're going to talk about Kellen Moore's design later on, but I didn't like the game he played. But people will moan when Jalen Hurts bows from the pocket and runs. But you know what? Most fumbles happen when you sit inside the pocket. Old school quarterbacks don't really exist in the NFL at the moment. He should run. I've got 2 quick points and 1 long one. I think I might end on the longest one, actually, and talk Kellen Moore at the end. I'll stick with an easy one that involves no clips at all, actually. Saquon Barkley's usage was utterly horrendous in this game. And you can do all the fancy things in the world. You can have all the great coaches. You can have the best offensive line, whatever. It doesn't matter if you don't use your best players. The Eagles fell into a deficit in this game. And because of that, they started panicking and they started throwing the ball early on. They came out, Shane, first play of the game from 21 personnel. and then with 2 running backs, and it looked like, oh, they were going to try something different. They came out with like a couple of 12 personnel snaps, and then the game began once they were 14-0 down, and they basically thought, let's just spread the field and throw. I said this for ages, so I'm repeating myself if you've heard me on a podcast or read anything I've done before, but running the ball is never successful like once. You have to commit to running the ball. The Eagles did not commit to running the ball. So in this game, they ran the ball on 2nd and 10 on the first drive, which is about as predictable of a run as you can get. Then obviously they punted. Second drive, they did not run until once again, 2nd and 10. Predictable, incomplete, followed by a run. This time they brought in Ben Van Sumeren and decided to run with a fullback, which once again they never went back to. I'm thinking, if you feel so strongly about this stuff, why are you putting it in for one play? Then by the time they got the ball back on the first drive, they were 14-0 down at that point already, or 21-0 down, possibly, I think, just like, which is utterly absurd. And I get that. And I understand that you don't want to be 21-0 down, but then the third drive is pass, 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 punt. So we're now on to 3 drives, and we've had 2 Saquon Barkley carries. Fourth drive, pass, pass, scramble, finally a run for 7 yards. That run came with 24-0 down with 6 minutes 28 left in the second quarter, and that was the first and 10 run that the Eagles had. And by the way, if Jalen Hurts doesn't scramble for the first down on 3rd and 6, it would have been another drive without Saquon Barkley. On that drive, when he ran on 1st and 10, all of a sudden you're in 2nd and 3, and Saquon Barkley runs again and picks up the first down. Like, the game is just easier, and of course they scored on that drive. Like, you have a superstar running back who's playing extremely well, and I don't want to talk like a fantasy guy about like playing usage and stuff. I don't even care if it was Kenny Gainwell getting some more carry, Shane, but like, you need to run the ball more against a defensive coordinator who is obsessed with getting you in 3rd and long. And I'm really surprised by how the Eagles approached the early downs in this play. But that's it for my first one. No film clips, and nice, short and sweet. And my second one is short and sweet as well. Right, what is your second point, Shane, on the offense?
All right, I want to talk about just some of the missed opportunities in this game, because I think there were a lot, and I think that there were missed opportunities for different reasons. And so, we talk about, the first drive, the Eagles come out and I assume they would want to run the ball. And the Bucs had 6 guys on the defensive line and 2 guys in the box. It was a 6-2 front. Man, that's kind of tough to run into. So second drive, they come out, and I loved this. They're going to call a play action pass, and they're in 12 personnel. They're going to pull Grant Calcaterra across the formation. We're going to really try to get the action flowing from right to left. And meanwhile, at the bottom of the screen, we're going to just run off the cornerback. It's single high, right? So we're thinking cover 3, maybe cover 1, either way. And you're going to run Dallas Goedert on a crossing route. If it's cover 3, we like him on that crossing route. If it's cover 1, we like him running away from the guy that's covering him, especially with the benefit of play action. And it's executed really well. Jalen Hurts is going to make a really good throw. Fred Johnson gets pushed back a little bit, but there's a throwing platform. And he puts the ball in Goddard's hands over the flat defender, and he drops it. Like, man, you just can't have – that's a beautiful throw right there. And you're down, again, your top 2 receivers. Dallas Goedert's the best passing option you have. You cannot be dropping this. Is it a different game if Dallas Goedert – if the Eagles pick up their first down on their second drive, down 7-0? Actually, I think it was 14-0 at that point. Whatever. Is it a different game if you get that first down? Does momentum shift? I'm not a big believer in momentum, but there is something to be said for getting in your head of like, man, we cannot get a first down. And so that one was a big one. On this second one that I want to show, again, it's a single high safety look, and there's going to be an out route to the top of the screen. I believe it's to Jahan Dotson. And at the bottom of the screen, there's like a curl, a flat route, and a dig route. And I think Jalen Hurts should come off of this out route. He doesn't. He throws it, but the cornerback has outside leverage. His shoulders are facing Hurts the whole time. It's really hard to win throwing an out-breaking route against outside leverage. And if he has bounced this, as soon as he sees that leverage, Jahan Dotson's winning this dig route. Like, he would be open in this throwing window if you're throwing the ball here now. But Hurts sticks on that route. And I get it. It's still a guy one-on-one, but there was just a better concept backside. Another one that I wanted to show is this is later in the game. It's a 3rd and 19, and the Buccaneers bring pressure. And the Eagles' response here on 3rd and 19 is to run 4 curls. Why? I have no idea. But for some reason, we think running 4 curls is a good idea. Johnny, do you remember there's a play the Eagles ran at one point in time? They had like a 3rd and long. They needed to go score to win a game. There might have been less than 2 minutes left, and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith might have been out. That found Dallas Goedert for like 60 yards. What was mesh?
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was last week, actually, when they schemed something up because you were down all of your pass catchers. This week, it was let's just run 4 curls. Like this is an asinine play call. The pressure comes. Now, you could argue like, hey, Hurts should hit right now. Hurts should just get this ball out to the middle. It's open technically. Guys, the first down marker is way out here. You're not picking up that first down because you're throwing to a guy that's going to be stopped with his back facing the marker instead of hitting a guy in stride with some sort of schemed up throw. Now, that's maybe ties into the Kellen Moore rant that you're going to go on, because that isn't actually the missed opportunity. The missed opportunity here is Hurts breaks the pocket. He escapes, but it's 3rd and 19. And if he keeps his eyes downfield, Jahan Dotson works to the sideline and is wide open for the first down. But Hurts tucks it and runs, and he slides. Now, ultimately, it wouldn't have mattered because Tyler Steen held anyways, and it gets called back. But he does a good job at points in this game of getting out of the pocket and keeping his eyes downfield. But on that one, he did not. And then this last one, the Eagles are going to run 4 verticals because, again, why would we scheme anything up? Let's run 4 verticals and try to target Jack Stoll in the slot. That's the best plan we've got here. And Jack Stoll is actually open, but Landon Dickerson whiffs on the pass protection. Now, again, if you really wanted to quibble, you could say that right now, as he's kind of hitting his back foot, he should drive this ball into the slot. It's probably open at this point, right? And maybe he does if it's Dallas Goedert or Devontae Smith, but he takes that extra hitch and then he's already down because Landon Dickerson just misses this. And I think Landon Dickerson is expecting a stunt here because multiple times in this game, what they would do is they would bring a guy from the inside and they would have him rush at the tackle and like pin the tackle and then loop someone back inside. And I think Dickerson's waiting on that. And when it doesn't come, he's just too late to flash his hands out there. But those were just a few. There's more. There was a lot of missed opportunities in this game that came down to poor protection, that came down to design, that came down to keeping our eyes downfield once we break the pocket. So even as bad as this game was, as many guys as they were missing, there were still some opportunities out there that were missed for various reasons.
Yeah, I think my favorite Shane is like Sassy Shane. I've decided is like, well, they could run this play that worked last week, and running with Jack Stoll was the perfect play call. I quite enjoy it. As a big fan of sarcasm in my daily life, I'm very much enjoying sarcastic or sassy Shane. Maybe that should be like a hashtag, whatever you want to call it. Right, yeah, I did want to come in on that very quickly because actually it ties in perfectly on my second point. By the way, Jalen Hurts did hit a seam ball to, I think, Grant Calcaterra.
Yeah, it was Calcaterra.
Down the middle of the field, which I tweeted just to annoy people who say you can't throw to the middle of the field. I have a theory, Shane. I tweeted my theory and it got some love online, which made me think maybe it wasn't an absolute nonsense theory. I think this theory is basically that Jalen Hurts has a problem with trust. I think Jalen Hurts might have a huge problem with trust. And for those watching, there's the Calcaterra up there, the seam ball. Jalen Hurts seems to throw to certain players when they're covered. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Dallas Goedert in this game. You already used the example I was going to use. That beautiful, beautiful throw over the linebacker's head. And then he has receivers who he just doesn't look at. Jahan Dotson feels like he's not earned his trust yet. Jack Stoll coming back apparently hasn't earned his trust on that play. Like, I don't really know how to explain this one, but I tweeted it out and I thought like maybe it's going to be a bit of a weird one and people are going to say like you're wrong. And then of course BLG replied with a bullseye. And the second BLG replied with a bullseye, I knew I was going to get lots of comments. So I had to mute that post because BLG is essentially a celebrity online. And I don't really know how to explain it. And it's a weird point, but I'm just convinced, and I watched a lot of Jalen Hurts film. I'm going back to, comment coming in Buddy Ball. I'm going back to like Albert O running down the seam wide open and him not taking it. I don't even know if it's like, is it a bad point? Like, I don't know exactly how to frame it. I mean, obviously it is bad, but there's nothing wrong with having trust in your guys. I think everyone's going to have trust in their guys. But I think it's limiting the offense a little bit. Because there is something weird about the fact that, like, I do not think this was a good game plan, and I will talk about the game plan in my final point at Kellen Moore. But there were guys open. I mean, I think Jahan Dotson looks good. Like, Jahan Dotson looks fast, Shane. I watched him, and Brian commenting there, JT O'Sullivan says he plays buddy ball with AJ. He absolutely does. But when AJ's not there, like, find a new buddy, and Dallas Goedert is the new buddy. Jahan Dotson to me looks really quick. I had a few comments about him. He looks really fast. He ran some clear out routes in this game, but looked good. Jalen Hurts on that scramble that you posted, he doesn't even look like why you wouldn't look up the field on 3rd and 19 on that play. So I don't really know how to put it into words, and I'm struggling to even talk about it because it's not like a very schematic point. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on it as well, but it just seems a little bit obvious watching the film that, like, Hurts has his guys, and he seems to be uncomfortable when they're not there. And you could look at it as a positive, because you could say that when Jahan Dotson learns the offense and when he learns Jalen Hurts' trust, then you can have 3 receivers that he trusts, plus Dallas Goedert. He obviously trusts Saquon Barkley already. So you could say, like, it's not a negative, because if A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are there, then it doesn't matter. And there's some good comments coming in. Jonathan commenting that Tom Brady was like that. Like, trust is a real thing. I'm not even saying it's a negative. I'm just saying that when when your guys are all injured and you haven't got many guys left, and to be fair to the Eagles, they screwed up at wide receiver 3. They added Jahan Dotson late. They could have added him earlier on. And I think the other receivers might low-key be trash. And I'm not sure Johnny Wilson is any good. And I'm not sure John Ross is any good. And I'm not sure the Eagles backup tight ends are any good.
I'm quite sure that John Ross is not good.
Yeah.
I have never been more sure of any football take in my life.
Yeah, fair enough. And poor John Ross getting burned as 1 hour into on the show page. I don't even my point, Shane. Like, you get my point.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just saying that, like, before you just crucified John Ross randomly an hour into the show. But, like, I can understand you can blame it on Howie a little bit and the way they built the offense. It's a superstar club offense. It's 3 elite players, Smith, Goddard, and Barkley. It's the 4th very good Dallas Goedert. But once you get out of those players, there's not a lot else. Like, there's not a lot of talent. And from people commenting, by the way, I think it's the most comments I've had on our Take Live. People seem to agree with me. So maybe it's something that is going around the Eagles online. So, yeah, give me your thought on that very quickly before you get into your final point, or your second point even. No, is your final point. And also just abuse John Ross, because apparently Shane hates John Ross.
I mean, there's a play in this game where they throw a vertical route to John Ross, and he's, like, jogging the entire time. It's like, yeah, brother, the only reason you were ever in the league to begin with is because you're fast. Can you at least just run in a straight line fast? Like, you're a 1st-round pick that's on a practice squad now getting elevated. Just go run. Like, it's the one thing you're supposed to be able to do. So, yeah, I've always been very out on John Ross. I think there's an element of trust with everything. And I tweeted out a clip of Devontae Smith running a curl route versus Jahan Dotson running a curl route that almost gets picked in this game. And there's differences people were pointing out, and this wasn't the point, but it's press coverage against Devontae Smith, which makes it easier to run that curl route. It's not press coverage against Jahan Dotson. And that wasn't really the point. My point was the footwork, like, from the time that, receivers take, like, the big step to, like, plant and break. And that big plant step, it's 2 more steps for Devontae Smith before he's fully squared up coming back to the ball. And he catches the ball in front of where he had that first break step. It takes an extra step for Jahan Dotson. He's not leaning back towards the line of scrimmage as he's planting so he can stop quickly. And then he's trying to catch it, like, 2 yards past his initial break step, falling to the sideline. Like, when you're going to try to throw those types of routes, trust is huge. I mean, Jalen Hurts threw a trust ball. It doesn't always work. He threw a trust ball to Devontae Smith against the Saints that got picked in the end zone because Devontae didn't finish the route, and Hurts got killed for it online all week. And I don't think Hurts cares what people say online, but that makes you second guess. Like, if I'm him, the next time I've got Devontae Smith on that route, am I going to blindly throw it? Maybe not. And this probably ties in. Let's go to your final point next, because I think this ties into this discussion of Kellen Moore. why then are you running so many timing-based routes in a game where the two of the top three targets that Hurts clearly trusts, maybe three, he might trust Britton Covey more than Dallas Goedert. I don't know. We saw a lot of Britton Covey passes early in the season, but these guys are out. Like, it's so many. The first play of the game, you come out and you run mirrored curl flats with the sit over the middle. It's a version of Hank. Like, it's all timing based with guys he doesn't have timing with. Like, they didn't run mesh a single time this entire game. After they ran it 3 times against the Saints, well, they ran it more than 3, but it was our concept of the week against the Saints because it worked. Like, there were no rub routes. There was no picks. There was no, like, let's scheme this guy open. It was so much like 4 verticals, go win one-on-one in isolation, 6th round pick Johnny Wilson. Curls, go throw this ball to Jahan Dotson, a guy we traded for a month ago, and you have to get the timing perfect or it might get intercepted. So I think trust is certainly an element. I think it is for every quarterback, maybe a little more for Jalen Hurts than others. And also, I think that they ratcheted up the amount of trust throws he was asked to make to this week with guys he's clearly not as comfortable with.
Yeah, we've got an hour 5, and I'm getting to Kellen Moore now. It's going to be a slightly longer one, but we're trying not to go too long. Yeah, I mean, when we looked at Kellen Moore, Shane, and there's lots of comments coming in about offenses being vanilla and players get injured, which is interesting, actually, from a new comment. I must admit, I didn't know about that, which is a very interesting comment. I didn't know if that was a thing at Dallas. What Brian commented about, let's run another play other than Hank, is 100% true. We commented on this. The biggest criticism I think anyone has ever had of Kellen Moore is he loves a curl. He loves a hitch. I think he loves players coming back to the ball too much. This is a hot take, conspiracy theory. I don't know. You call it what you want. I do not believe that a head coach, Nick Sirianni, who has no role in the defense, doesn't have a role in the offense at all. I do not believe he is literally shut out of meeting rooms and has no say. This coaching staff is not a Kellen Moore coaching staff. There are guys there that were here under Sirianni. There are not a lot of guys that have been with Kellen Moore his whole career, shall we say. I do not believe this is a 100% Kellen Moore offense. Like, there is no way. I've watched Kellen Moore offenses. It's under center, outside zone, and they can't do it. They can't run it for whatever reason, whether Stout doesn't want to run it, whether the team can't run it, but forget the under center stuff. Let's just talk basic passing concepts. Let's just talk pass concepts. Motion wasn't there this week. They didn't use motion cleverly. They didn't use shifts cleverly. They didn't use rub routes. I was literally talking last week about how good they were at scheming guys open with mesh as we were and using different things. Remember the first week when they ran like a double post wheel to Saquon Barkley? That was cool. Where the hell was that play gone? Like, this was an incredibly bland game plan. And I don't really get it. And quite simply, there are two. And I'm going to say something, Shane, controversial. I'm feeling like a little bit angry about this. There are too many comments about Jalen Hurts being unable to read a defense, and there are too many comments about Jalen Hurts where they act like he's like a 2-year-old who's never played quarterback before. You can run better stuff than they've run this week. Like, I've seen Jalen Hurts run some concepts. I watched him run double post wheel. I've watched him run mesh. Like, to be honest, I think there might be an element of who Jalen Hurts is and his mobility. And you guys can take that as whatever you think I might be saying about people online talking about a certain type of quarterback being unable to read a defense. And I'll let you read between the lines there. But this is not like a 2-year-old who's never played football before. This is not a guy who's run, read, and run. Jalen Hurts is not the best quarterback in the world at reading a defense. He's not brilliant. He has problems seeing over his offensive line. But he's not a rookie. Like, I've seen him run concepts. You can't tell me that Jalen Hurts can only run 2 slants. I've heard these things like Jalen Hurts can't use motion. Well, I've seen him run with motion. I've seen him run an offense very well against the Packers week 1 with a hell of a lot of motion. Like, there are things that people keep saying Jalen Hurts can't do. And then I'm like, well, I understand maybe he doesn't want to do them. Maybe he has a type and Sirianni has a type. But for what it's worth, it appears like Jalen Hurts hates Nick Sirianni anyway. So I highly doubt Jalen Hurts is going into Kellen Moore going, we need the Sirianni offense back. We need the 4 Hurts back. Like, I think this organization is built around superstars. And I think when Kellen Moore got the job was build this offense around superstars. And right now, the superstars are not there. And I think quite simply, the Eagles have put too much emphasis on building a team around A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And because they weren't there this week, basically, the game plan became incredibly passive. I also assume, Shane, that they were going against Todd Bowles, who is a bit of a defensive genius when it comes to blitzing, and maybe they didn't want to do a lot of creative stuff because they wanted to simplify things. I don't No, like how much of it? There's lots of comments going in. Like, I don't know how much is Sirianni. I don't know how much is Moore. We will never know. And the Eagles should have fired Nick Sirianni, because then it would be far easier for me to do analysis on whose offense this is. All I'm saying is, Shane, we did a lot of work on Kellen Moore in the offseason. I did a lot. We did whole drives. We did. I went back and watched Cowboys film. I was watching All-22 of 3-4 years ago. I watched a lot of Chargers. I watched a lot of Cowboys. What we saw on Sunday is not an offense that I resemble as a Kellen Moore offense. Now, whether that means he is, and this does not mean he's not involved, Shane. He's obviously involved. He's the offensive coordinator. We can't say everything good is Kellen Moore, everything bad is Nick Sirianni. We can't say every time it's double post will, we go, that's got Kellen Moore's fingertips on it. And every time they run 4 verts, we go, Nick Sirianni called that play. Like, we can't just put everything bad on Sirianni and everything good on Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore loves curl routes. Kellen Moore loves comeback routes. So I can put that on Kellen Moore as well. But whatever's happening, I do not think the blend of offenses is working very well. And I'll end with some good news. I think it will get a hell of a lot better, because I think this offense is made for A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and they will come back. And I think this offense will be really good again, and we will forget about this week. But this week was not good. If Kellen Moore was going for an offensive coordinator interview and they put on the film for this week, they'd say, what were you doing with your pass concepts this week? There was a lot of individual routes, comebacks, go routes, 4 verts. There was not a lot of creativity. They tried one screen pass to Saquon Barkley. It didn't work. They never tried it again. They played one snap with 21 personnel. They never tried it again. Like, in the red zone, when Jalen Hurts takes that fumble, they're running verticals with nothing underneath. I think I'm not going to have a chat about Kellen Moore yet. I'm far more concerned about Vic Fangio. Far more concerned about Vic Fangio, because this offense will get better when the players come back. But this was definitely a stock down week for Kellen Moore. And yeah, I'm very interested to see how this offense responds, because I want to see a lot more motion coming back. And I want to see the offense we saw literally 3 weeks ago against the Green Bay Packers, because this week was not it, Shane. It was not good.
Yeah, it didn't even look like the same offense. So I put out on Twitter, for our Patreon community, I put out my All-22 pass game review. So it's like 30 minutes long this week. But on Twitter, I put out a clip going through like 3 of the plays and I talked about the opening play, Hank. I didn't show it on the podcast here, but I talk about that one. I talk about the 3rd and 19 and a couple of other plays where I just don't understand the design. I don't understand what you're trying to do. So I'm with you on all of that. I'll wrap us up here with my final point. This is going to feel anticlimactic after this whole episode, because it's literally one play and it's pretty basic, but it's our concept of the week. So our concept of the week this week is sail. Sail is a 3-level flood concept that's designed to attack zone coverage rules. And so you see the Eagles motioning Dallas Goedert from out wide back inside. Sail basically has a vertical route designed to run off the deep defender. It has a flat route. This time it's going to come from the running back, Saquon. I think that's Saquon. Honestly, it might be Kenny Gainwell. I don't know. And then it has a corner route. This time it's going to be to Dallas Goedert. And what you're trying to do is run off the safety and then put the flat defender in a conflict where if he comes down on the flat route, you can throw it to Dallas Goedert behind him. If he sinks with Dallas Goedert, you can throw it to Saquon Barkley, who now has 8 to 9 yards of space to make a guy miss. And so you can see it play out to perfection here. You get this horizontal stretch pulling off this safety, and you got the flat defender jams Goedert, but then he's got to get out to the flat to Saquon, and Hurts steps up and throws this. And it's kind of a shame that, I mean, he puts this ball where you want to put it. You want to put this to the sideline because the safety is going to turn and try to go close on it. It's a little unfortunate that it gets quite so far to the sideline that Goedert catches it and goes out of bounds, because the safety does trip and fall when he tries to flip his hips. But the Eagles would end up scoring. It would take them until 4th and goal. But that is our concept of the week. It is sail. Like I said, that's a little bit of an anticlimactic point after this whole podcast. But this is a concept that the Eagles like to run. They run it a lot. In this game, for some reason, a lot of times it seemed like they were replacing the vertical route with the curl route that didn't really stress the defense at all. And that was annoying. And I talked about that on the All-22. But there you go. Concept of the week.
Yeah, I think it's actually in a weird way, it's quite a nice way to end because it mentions some of the things we spoke about. Number one, that Jalen Hurts trusts Dallas Goedert and will throw that route all day long. And Jalen Hurts throws a beautiful intermediate out route. He always has. We've had quite a lot of comments about Hurts in the middle of the field, and like the truth is, which a lot of people have said, he is not big. Like he is not a big guy, and quarterback size does matter. He's not 6'6", he's not 6'7". He will prefer throwing to the outside. It's not the end of the world. It does mean that you can run certain plays that can scheme things up. And there is no doubt that Jalen Hurts prefers throwing those kind of routes. We just didn't see like the Eagles build off it. Like they didn't run it that often. They definitely could have run it more. And you could do other stuff with that. Then you can have Dallas Goedert run like a fake post and then cut it outside. Then you can run it from, you can use motion. You can run sail with mesh. Like a guy coming across from the other side of the field running the shorter route. There are different things you can do. And it felt like the kind of game that like you load up Madden, you go on like medium pass concepts and you read them all and, oh, this one looks good and we'll run this one. And there's just nothing about it except for like, this is the concept in its basic form. And there really wasn't any creativity this week. And it felt like the week where they had to get creative. Just to finish off on my point, I'm not going to throw the toys at the pram with Kellen Moore yet. I still think Kellen Moore is a good offensive coordinator. And I think he may be hamstrung slightly by a head coach who maybe has a certain philosophy, but also an organization that has a certain philosophy. And I think it's always going to be a slight blend of Kellen Moore's offense with Sirianni this year. But I would not panic about the offense. I am on a level of panic. I don't know where you are, Shane. I'm like a 1 out of 10 on the offense. I'm really, really not worried. I think when AJ Brown and Devontae Smith come back, this offense could be extremely good again. We can have a discussion about whether that's good and whether it's good to rely on two players. That's a fair philosophical discussion. But whatever you think, that's how this Eagles offense is built. When you spend a serious amount of money on top two receivers, you're not going to have 3, 4, and 5 being elite as well. That is the way the offense is built. The offense is not built like the Green Bay Packers, who have got like 4 or 5 that are all really good, like Romeo Doubs, Wicks, Jaden Reed, Christian Watson. All one of those 4 could be number 1 receivers on any given day. That's not how the Eagles are built. The Eagles are built differently. And like it or not, that is the way it is done. And that means when those superstars are out, it will never, ever be as good. So I put my panic level on the offense at like a 1. Defense, I am not convinced at all by anything I've seen this year, really. So I'm far more concerned about the defense. But anyway, we've had loads of comments today, which is awesome. I'll put a little plug, because you always do the plug as well. Your All-22 breakdown is brilliant, and you only get it if you go on Patreon. If you want, you can get a 7-day free trial on Patreon. So come and hang in with Discord for 7 days, see how you find it. I'm not sounding really arrogant when I say this, Shane, and I do not mean to be, but my film threads get like far too many responses for me to reply to people. If you want to really talk to me like one-on-one and ask me questions, Discord is the way to do it, because we don't have that many people in there. So I will absolutely see every single comment in the Discord. It is only $3 to get in the Discord, $5 if you want the All-22 video as well. But you can do a 7-day free trial. So if you are listening, because we've got loads of comments today, which is awesome, and I really appreciate it, please do come and hang. But that'll be me. That'll be it for me, Shane. I'll leave you to do the final ending or whatever it is you do, seeing as we're nearly possibly the longest show ever that we've ever done. I think it might be.
Yeah, I posted that yesterday. I got done with my film and I was immediately leaving to go to my kids' cross country meet. And I was like, I'll try to respond to people, but I get a lot of comments on film stuff. Later in the week, I get less, and it's a lot easier to like respond to everybody. But definitely the Discord is a cool place to come hang out. You get an ad-free version of this podcast. You get to help pick player spotlights and stuff like that. So we would greatly appreciate it if you guys head over there. Our ability to monetize this keeps us able to keep doing it. So whether that means downloading the free podcast, Eagles Pinpool Network, every download helps us out. Supporting the Patreon, we really appreciate it. A couple comments I want to read, and then we'll get out of here. Tyler says, it's good to hear people break it down without calling for people's heads. Thank you. For now, we may hit that point, but yeah, for now. We got another comment that says, I think we should keep these coordinators for more than a season, let guys grow into the schemes, especially the defense. And another one that said the offense is too talented to not be good when it's healthy. And I agree with that. I would say my level of concern for the offense is like a 2 out of 10. I mean, there's some little things, mainly turnover things I would like cleaned up. Overall, I just need you healthy. Defense, I'm at like an 8 out of 10. I'm officially, my faith in Fangio has been shaken a little bit, and I want to see what he does. He's got 2 weeks to come out of the bye with a plan, so we'll see what he does. That's going to do it for this episode of On the Shane Page. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. Again, please go check out the podcast feed. It's free, Eagles Pinpool Network. This show, as well as like 6 other shows, go out to the feed, so there's something there you will like no matter what. So hit that subscribe button, share it with your friends. Johnny and I will catch you guys next week for whatever we talk about on another episode of On the Shane Page.